Good afternoon, everybody on the West Coast, and welcome in to another edition of Dodgers Dawgs as part of the Dodgers Daily Network. My name is Austin Brubaker. I will be your host this evening on a Thursday evening. A little bit of a different day of which we normally do the show. Normally we do it Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Today we're going to go on a Thursday. Been quite a bit busy for me on my own end, so this is the day that I was able to find a little bit of free time to be able to do stuff. Just some housekeeping notes. Casey is under the weather right now. That's why there hasn't been as many recap videos, particularly recapping the series against the Cleveland Guardians over the past week. He is currently recovering. I believe he's doing fine based on the last time that I interact with him, but I think he's going to be out for about the rest of the week. So I will be doing this show for you guys tonight. We might also, and this depends on exactly what's going on during the day on Saturday, it could be also a Saturday late morning show that we do. Typically, might be able to plan on doing that maybe a little bit after lunchtime here on the East Coast. Might be able to squeeze in a show as well for you guys. Talking a lot about the Dodgers series against the New York Yankees, which is coming up. Massive series that is coming up. World Series rematch, Dodgers versus Yankees. It's going to be a fun series to be able to go watch without as much of the high stakes, of course, that happened during the 2024 World Series. Hopefully there's a lot of good moments that happen for the Dodgers this upcoming week. And if you're going to the games coming up over the next couple of days, enjoy the time. It's going to be a lot of fun watching the Los Angeles Dodgers play baseball. It's going to be a little bit of we're going to talk about several different things. Typically on the shows that I am in charge of, we're going to dive into some of the numbers, of course. We're going to talk a lot about where things are at. I also have a little bit of an update, and this is what we're going to do after we talk a little bit about the new pitcher that the Dodgers acquired today, which, yes, we're going to get to that in just a minute. What I'm going to do after that is we're actually going to take a little bit of a trip and talk about something that I think has been a incredibly positive development for this organization, because the hitting development at the minor league level is actually going incredibly well. And I'm going to show you just how well it is going for the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's going to be a fun show. We're going to be a lot of interacting that we're going to do today. Philip Gomez, thank you very much for joining us. Daniel Very Sports Highlights, happy Thursday, not Friday. We're Thursday night in the big town. Happy Thursday to you as well. Philip Gomez says trade season. And Justin Lamas, thank you very much for joining us. Your thoughts on Alexis Diaz? You know anything about the prospect we gave up? Yes, so we're going to go ahead and talk about Alexis Diaz first. I don't actually have a whole lot of information about the prospect that the Los Angeles Dodgers gave up, just because I have not had a chance to be able to watch him in action. Hold on. So earlier this afternoon, the Los Angeles Dodgers, for those of you who are unfamiliar, made a trade with the Cincinnati Reds. They traded for relief pitcher Alexis Diaz. In exchange, they gave up right-handed relief prospect Mike Villani. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Villani, I believe, was a 13th round pick during the last draft. Didn't spend a whole lot of time, I don't believe, any action down in Rancho. Did not spend any action in Great Lakes. Just had, I believe, a couple of appearances during the ACL. So really hadn't had a whole lot of chance to be able to look at him to see what his movement on some of his pitches are. But he was traded. The Reds scouted him. The Reds knew him probably from the college days. They decided to acquire him. And in exchange, the Los Angeles Dodgers got some help for this bullpen, potentially. So let's go into a little bit of the background of Alexis Diaz and then talk about where he could potentially fit in and where does he fit in now, and what could the Dodgers potentially do to try to get him to a place where they could actually utilize him, or is he in a place where he is actually usable right now? So Alexis Diaz actually has a pretty notable background, not just because of who he's related to. He's related to New York Mets closer Edwin Diaz, but when he first came into the show, had immediate success with the Cincinnati Reds. dating back to 2022, his debut year, went out, pitched 63 innings, and was immediately thrust into late inning type of situations, or at least eventually was. During his 59 games there, ended up having 10 saves opportunities, or 10 saves that he had. 1.84 ERA in 2022. Some of the underlying metrics a little bit higher, but still 1.1 WAR as a rookie reliever. You're going to take that every single time. Age 26 in 2023 was perhaps his best season, in which he was top 10 relief pitchers by Fangraphs WAR during the 2023 season. Put up 1.8 Fangraphs WAR, 3.07 ERA. Went out there, 71 appearances, had 37 saves for the Cincinnati Reds in 2023. Continued in a late inning role last year, but started to struggle a little bit more, and you could see the strikeouts start to come down, and the velo in particularly started to come down throughout the years for Alexis Diaz. Last year, 60 appearances, 56 innings pitched, 28 saves, but the ERA just kept jumping a little bit for him. 1.84 in 2022, 3.07 in 2023, to 3.99, almost 4 last year, just 0.3 Fangraphs WAR for him because some of the underlying metrics weren't great, and that has to do with his ability to gather strikeouts. Went from 32%, 32.5% in 2022 to 30% in 2023. You'll take that. 2024, it was just at 22.7%, and I think that correlates along well with what his velo has dropped to. It was about 95.5 average 2022 to 94.5 23 to 94 last year. In his brief appearances this year, it's down to 93. So there clearly has been a decrease in the velo that he's been able to produce on the mound. This year, in just 6 appearances, have not gone well for Alexis Diaz. Was sent down to the minor leagues because he does have all of his minor league options. He's accrued, I believe, 3 service years. He still has all of his minor league options, but with a 12 ERA on the season. So, been very much of a struggle for Alexis Diaz. For him, he is really a 2-pitch pitcher, fastball, slider. The slider has been something that's been really dominant, really effective in the past when he has had some success. But this year just hasn't been that type of pitch for him. Combine that with the fact that his fastball velo has been down quite a bit, and Alexis Diaz has struggled quite a bit and has not been the same pitcher that he was. So the Los Angeles Dodgers, in a need for right-handed relief pitchers, made the move to go out and trade for Alexis Diaz. Now, the immediate thought, given the profile of the name that this player has, which, remember, back in 2023, was arguably and probably was by Fangraphs WAR, I believe he was 7th, a top 10 relief pitcher in the game of baseball. He is not currently at that profile, and so while the expectation might be that he's immediately thrust into a role within this Dodgers bullpen, especially with the need to have a lot of arms, and especially when a lot of your right-handed relief pitchers are out. I think the most notable one right now, or the highest leverage arm that's a right-handed reliever, is Ben Kasparius, which we might get into a little bit of some interesting numbers with Ben Kasparius in just a second. Other than that, your right-handed relief arms are Lou Trevino, Luis Garcia, and Chris Stratton. From what it sounds like, based on the reporting that we have, Alexis Diaz isn't going to start the season at the major league level. He's not going to be in Los Angeles to start the season. He's actually going to be spending some time in Oklahoma City, which probably, and I say probably, but based on the results that Alexis Diaz has so far, is absolutely the correct move for him, given the real struggles that he has had at the major league level. He's also had some struggles at the minor league level as well. Looking at some of his AAA numbers on this season, a 4.61 ERA, the FIP and expected FIP are around 6 right now, and that has to do with he struggles a little bit of throwing to strikes. So, Alexis Diaz fits a little bit of the profile that the Dodgers like. He's got that fastball. He's got the slider. They've got to work on trying to fix some of the mechanics to get his fastball to a place where it can be dominant and effective. They also have to find different ways to get his command a little bit back on track to try to help fix that. This is a big wild card if the Dodgers are able to make the pieces work. If they are able to fix all of these different elements, Alexis Diaz has shown the potential to be a pitcher of a caliber that is a dominant back end of the reliever arm. He has not showcased that in a couple of years. He has not showcased that since 2023. Last year was decent, although there was some struggles that he had, and you could see some of the warning signs come early for Alexis Diaz. So it is with this trade acquisition, a little bit of a wild card that the Dodgers are taking a chance on, and they're giving up one of their draft picks, of which is very limited quantity during the game today. But they're going ahead and taking a chance on Alexis Diaz to see if they, as a pitching development staff, can go ahead and fix him and turn him into the pitcher that he is capable of. With this signing, I think it's probably going to take some time. You might potentially see him up a little bit, maybe here and now again. Although, based on the way that the Dodgers currently have their relievers right now, it would require them moving on from either Lou Trevino, Luis Garcia, or Chris Stratton. Probably not going to move on from Anthony Banda right now. I don't think that's in the cards. They would have to move off of them and turn to Alexis Diaz, which I don't think they're completely ready to. And here's a little bit of good news as well. This comes from Alex Friedman, the play-by-play commentator from the Oklahoma City. Just tweeted this out maybe about 45-50 minutes ago. It sounds like this week, Edgardo Henriquez and Emmett Sheehan are going to be starting rehab outings in Oklahoma City. It's going to be a very good thing to get those arms started in the process. Doesn't mean that they're going to be ready next week as we see an arm like a Michael Kopech continue to go out and get rehab starts. I don't know how long he's going to be out in rehab outings, but they're continuing having him go out there until they feel that he is ready to go and be of an impact in Los Angeles. But there's more additional arms coming. And if there's more additional arms coming, especially because they can have Alexis Diaz, an arm of this much potential and hope down at the minor leagues to try to get right, they might take their time a little bit to see if they can just turn this arm into something of note. And perhaps this is really interesting timing because we are getting to the end of May. A lot of people are already starting to think about trade deadline. And certainly the Dodgers, if things stood today, would very seriously consider looking at potential relief arms. Not saying that they will, because they still have arms that could come back, in which case you might not have a whole lot of room for even some of the guys that have been dominant, like Jack Dreyer or Ben Kasparius. If all of your arms were healthy, it could get very crowded in that bullpen. But as it stands right now, that could be an area of which the Dodgers target. And if you're looking to minimize the damage or minimize the assets that you give up, perhaps rolling the dice on somebody who has the potential of being a caliber of pitcher as talented as Alexis Diaz, again, had been in 2023 one of the better relievers in the game of baseball. Not is right now, but had been in the past. If they could potentially unlock something with him that could minimize the assets that they give out in the trade deadline, and perhaps this is just a roll of the dice chance to try to limit some of the needs that they could potentially have later in the season. We'll have to wait and see how all these things shake out. Alexis Diaz has yet to pitch in a Dodgers uniform, yet to pitch in an Oklahoma City Comets uniform. All of these things will be decided. All of these things will be figured out. And I'm excited to see where things pan out. As far as predicting where this pans out, I'm not buying too much stock into this, although it is something that I'm keeping an eye out at least a little bit for. I'm not pinning all of my hopes, especially not with as much hope as there should be with this Dodgers team, with the World Series expectations of Alexis Diaz fixing this team. But it is something to note with how good he actually is. So I'm curious with you guys in the chat, and I want this to be a little bit of an interactive chat. We'll dive into some of the numbers. We'll get into some of the analytics. Love that type of stuff. What do you guys think of this move? Is this something that you think is going to make an impact to the Dodgers? And most importantly, do you think the Dodgers can fix Alexis Diaz either this season or for the next 2 seasons after this, which I believe they would have him under club control? Let's get to a couple of comments before I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about a little bit of research that I was able to do to talk about just where the hitting development is. We'll go ahead and talk about that a little bit. Philip Gomez says trade season. We'll talk a little bit about that. Daniel Berry Sports Highlights says Alexis is greater than Tanner Scott. I am not there. Alexis Diaz currently, I mean, as rough as it has been for Tanner Scott, which, let's be frank, it has been a struggle, at least a little bit from the ERA perspective, from the big game moments or the situations of which you are paying Tanner Scott to play in. Think about the game in New York in which the game got tied because he wasn't able to complete the save situation, or very obviously during the game that happened yesterday in Cleveland. There's just been a lot of those moments for Tanner Scott early this season. Some of the underlying metrics suggest that he's not as bad of a pitcher as he has suggested, but there clearly is something that's just a little bit off with it. He's throwing a lot more strikes, as has been stated on a multitude of times, just not able to find a way to avoid a lot of the hard contact. And with Tanner Scott, he's got to be able to hold account for that. So we'll have to wait and see with Tanner Scott. I'm not completely worried right now, but what this does and should do is just remind people of the risk that comes with going out and getting relief pitchers, especially relief pitchers that require as much value as he has. Relief pitchers are incredibly volatile because they're dealing with very small sample sizes. You're going small bursts at a time, which can lead to some inconsistencies at times with the numbers. I still think long-term Tanner Scott should be fine, but it is a rough stretch right now during a time that the Dodgers need him most, and that has been incredibly disappointing for him. Justin Lamas, 1:30 in France. Glad that you're joining us here, and glad that we're able to provide a little bit of a time for you to be able to join and talk with us. Philip Gomez, Austin, would you, as the O's GM, would you trade Adley or Gunnar for Miller, Ryan, May, and Vargas? I wouldn't do that for Adley and Gunnar. I think those are 2 cornerstone guys. If you're talking about, and I wouldn't if I was the Orioles GM, which you got to remember, you got to put yourself in a situation of the other organization shoes. If I was another organization and I was specifically looking to trade with the Dodgers, it depends on what my actual goal is. If the Orioles, and this is not something that I anticipate them doing, so we won't spend a ton of time on it, but if they were under any scenario looking to trade Adley Rutschman or a Gunnar Henderson, 2 cornerstones, guys that are going to be with the organization for at least the next 3+ seasons. I don't know exactly how much service time they have. I believe Gunnar has more than Adley Rutschman. But you're talking about 3+ service years, especially cheaper service years. You're talking about top guys, at least 4 to 5 top guys at a minimum. So you're not even talking about River Ryan. You're not talking about Dustin May, Bobby Miller. You're not talking about Yoendry Vargas. You're talking about Zaire Hope. You're talking about Josue DePaula. You're talking about those guys. You're talking about as many of those guys as possible if you're the Orioles GM, which, given the Dodgers' shoes, I don't think they'd want necessarily to give up all those guys. It would have to be for the right player for those guys, which certainly Gunnar Henderson, amazing. Adley Rutschman is really good. doesn't really fit with the organization, with the club. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. Justin Lama says it'd take a lot more to get Gunnar or Adley than that package. Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Chuck Huddleston, thank you very much for joining us. Hi back to yourself. Alexis Diaz has a lot to be fixed. Velo's way down and costs about $5 to $6 million, figuring in the tax. Yeah, it's a little bit of a high value as far as monetary value to go ahead and get in Alexis Diaz if you're the Dodgers, but we've seen this organization go out and be willing to go and pay any sort of expense to go get the best players possible. So what we're going to do right now is we're actually going to shift gears just a little bit. We're going to get back into talking about the Los Angeles Dodgers. After the segment, we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive onto the numbers of a lot of these players and talk about some potentially concerning areas. We might also do a little bit of an exercise as far as some things to potentially keep an eye out for. I might do a little bit of an exercise with Alex Freeland as well. Something that I want to take note. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to go a little bit into some of the research that I had done prior to the show. I actually tweeted this out a little bit or posted this out, whatever exactly it's called these days. We're going to go ahead and cut over to here because I want to give a little bit of an update as far as the Dodgers hitting development goes. Where is the organization at with developing hitters? Because there's been a critique over the past several years that the Los Angeles Dodgers have a lack of ability to be able to develop hitters. And so part of what I've taken on is going out and actually stating, is that actually true? And where does the organization actually sit with being able to develop young hitters? Is the problem with the Dodgers being able to develop hitters, or is potentially the Dodgers' problem with being able to implement players in the show? And we will certainly talk about that because I have a few thoughts about the way that the Dodgers are implementing a Ha-Seong Kim and a Dalton Rushing, and I just want to talk over some of that stuff. But in order to see where the Dodgers are at, I think it's important to look at the numbers down at the minor league level. A lot of people pass over a lot of the numbers at the minor league level because they're not the numbers necessarily that you're looking for. You're looking for the results at the major league level. I'm going to tell you why it's important also to look at the numbers at the minor league level. One, players at the major league level, players that come up and become successful at the show, typically have some degree of success down at the minor leagues. While it is true that not all successful minor league players will become successful big league players, most successful major league players were successful to some degree at the minor league level. So it is important to take note of the guys that are having a lot of success at the minor league level and to see how they're doing. And especially this is really important to look at some of the younger players as well. We're going to look at the organization, both for all players in the organization that meet a certain plate appearance level, as well as the younger players in the organization, because the younger players in the organization, just looking at those that could be of the future of the organization, this is typically what you're looking for. And the cutoff that I decided to use for each of these metrics is 23 or younger. So we're going to look at Dodgers players within the organization that are 23 or younger and have at least 80 plate appearances to this point in the season. The reason why I chose 80 is because that eliminates just about all of the guys at the complex level. The complex level statistics get a little bit funky, and I wanted to eliminate as many of those guys as I possibly could. I think there's a couple of guys that snuck in past that criteria, but that's the criteria I decided to set in the research. And what we're going to do is we're going to compare the Dodgers to all other organizations and see where they match up in 2025 as an organization of developing hitters. And I want to go ahead and show you this. This is from my Twitter at AustinBRU99. You can follow me. You don't have to. I don't really care that much. So we're going to go ahead and read this a little bit. I'm going to highlight where this is important. The Dodgers, as I stated, have perhaps the best depth, meaning the most quantity of young organizational hitters in baseball so far in 2025. And the evidence that have pointed that out is we're going to use the metric WRC plus, probably my favorite statistic right now in baseball as far as particularly with measuring how good minor league players are, because it's easily comparable to players of other levels as well. So we're going to look at players at the minor league level who have at least 140 WRC plus, 80 plate appearances, and are 23 or younger. You're looking at major league organizations. The Dodgers have 9 such players. All other organizations have 6 or less. Cleveland, Minnesota, and the Mets have 6. Boston, Detroit, Milwaukee, New York, and Toronto have 5. Everybody else has 4 or less, which means the Dodgers have a vast difference in comparison to other organizations as far as young players that are being extraordinarily successful. 40% or better is really, really good. Players that are 23 or younger that meet that criteria: Mike Sirota, who has, by weighted runs above average, been the best hitter in all of minor league baseball, has a 207 WRC plus. Myro Martinez, who was briefly on the Great Lakes Loons, got sent back to Rancho, has a 189 WRC plus. Actually, was really surprised and pleasantly surprised to see how well he's doing. Brandon Tunick, who I believe is at the complex level, one of the guys that snuck in, has a 162 WRC plus. Eduardo Quintero, outfielder down in Rancho, 159 WRC plus. Josue De Paula, who's an outfielder for the Great Lakes right now, 157. Victor Rodriguez, I believe a catcher down in Rancho, 152. Nelson Quiros, catcher for the Great Lakes Loons, 150 WRC plus. Elijah Hayline, shortstop for Rancho, 150 WRC plus. And Zaire Hope, outfielder for Great Lakes, one of the guys are most excited about, 147 WRC plus. 9 players as of today with a 140 WRC plus, 23 or younger, in at least 80 plate appearances on the season. Remarkable stuff of the quantity of players. Remember, most other organizations don't have 9 guys. They have 6 or less. Most other organizations have 4, 3, 5 of these guys. Dodgers have a larger quantity of them. Now let's lower the bar a little bit. Let's look at, instead of 140 WRC plus, let's look at 125. 25% above league average. Dodgers have 10 of those guys, 23 or younger. Remember, 9 of them were 140. One of them was between 125 and 139. Cleveland, Detroit, New York, Pittsburgh have 9. Other organizations have 8 and 7. We lower that a little bit further to 110, meaning at least 10% better than league average WRC plus. Dodgers still remain on top with 16. Cleveland and the Mets have 15, Toronto 14, Milwaukee 13. Other organizations have 12. And so what you're seeing is for these 3 categories, WRC plus, 140, 125, 110, the Dodgers rank first, second, and first, respectively, percentage-wise. So in each one of those categories, they rank first as far as quantity-wise. They have the most players quantity-wise: 9 in 140, 10 at 125, 16 in 110. If we look at percentage-wise, meaning taking that in comparison to the percentage of players that are 23 or younger, the Dodgers still rank first, second, and first. So still right at the top of the leaderboard. Tons of young talent within this organization for the Los Angeles Dodgers. They remain, to this point of the season, perhaps and very arguably the best organization as far as developing a lot of their young hitters, at least performance-wise, as of the results after the games on May 28th, 2025. Now, what I wanted to do, remove the qualifier 23 or younger. This is 24 plus. This includes guys like a Dalton Rushing. So the previous part did not include Dalton Rushing. Did not include outfielder Cole Myers, who has one of the highest walk percentages in all of minor league baseball. If you remove that, 140 WRC plus, 80 plate appearances, Dodgers are still first ahead of all other organizations. Minnesota and Detroit are trailing shortly behind them. You look at 125 WRC plus, the Dodgers aren't in first, they're actually in third, tied for third with 15, but shortly behind Detroit and Minnesota with 17 and 16. But if you lower that to 110 WRC plus, Dodgers have 25, back in first place. Percentage-wise, for each one of these, the Dodgers rank first percentage-wise, getting players who have at least 140 WRC plus and 80 plate appearances. For seventh when looking at 125 and 80 plate appearances, and then first for 110 WRC plus and 80 plate appearances. And I think this is really important because they've had some of their players really do well at the major league level, right, as well. And I'm going to go ahead and cut back over to me. They've had an Andy Pages go out there and perform incredibly well, which, despite some of the numbers slowing down a little bit during the month of May, I think you can still tell he's putting up incredibly competitive at-bats each and every single time that he's up there, or a vast majority of the time that he's up there. He's making an impact, and some of the batted ball stuff has gotten better and better and better for Andy Pages as a season, and I think we all, when he's playing in the corner outfield, love his cannon of an arm. Other players on other organizations have done really well as well that grew up in this Dodgers system. I think of a Zach McKinstry, who's a top 30 position player by WAR this season with 1.8 WAR, 127 WRC plus. Miguel Vargas, if you haven't paid attention, has really turned it around for the Chicago White Sox. Michael Busch has performed well. You've seen Dalton Rushing, Yorbit Vivas. You've seen Drew Avens recently make his debut, which I don't think Casey and I have had the chance to really talk about that, but is really, really awesome to see just the grind and story that he has to be able to make his debut. There's a lot of success stories with Dodgers being able to develop talent, being able to grow talent. And there's a couple of different takeaways that I want to make with this. The first main takeaway comes in relation to what we've talked about a little bit today with the Dodgers making a trade. With the Dodgers' ability to be able to develop these guys and be able to showcase them to the degree that they've had. Remember, all these guys having a lot of success early in the season. What that does is that increases all of their value and increases the Dodgers' potential chips to be able to use in a trade piece. So, if the Dodgers wanted to go out there and look for different assets, the more of these players that you have, the more potential trade chips that you could have. So if a player that you did not necessarily expect to have as great of numbers as they are currently having, it's not just Josue De Paula and Zaire Hope going out there putting up numbers, but if guys like Elijah Hainline are going out there and showcasing really, really solid numbers down in Rancho, if you're looking at other guys going out there performing incredibly well, what that does is just increases options to be able to go out there and look for different places to be able to trade these pieces and open up different avenues to make the major league club as best as it possibly can. Because remember, the goal isn't to make the minor league club as good as possible. As much and as deeply as I want the Loons to win a Midwest League championship, the goal is for the Los Angeles Dodgers to win another World Series championship, and they'll do what they can to be able to make that happen. Having a lot of these players go out there and have a lot of success certainly helps go out there and make that goal a little bit more of a reality, or at least open up more options for the Dodgers to go out there and acquire talent. All of this is important for that. It also is important to be able to reestablish that the Dodgers have an ability to be able to develop hitters at an effective rate, to be able to develop hitters that can go out there and produce. And this is why it was important to talk a little bit about some of the hitters that have perhaps made a little bit of an impact recently with Andy Pages, with players in other organizations, McKinstry, Vargas, Busch. We've seen some other players make their debut recently. I think the Dodgers do have an ability to develop hitters. So then it becomes a question, and this is where the conversation shifts into Dalton Rushing and Hae-Sung Kim. What is the most effective and best way to be able to develop those hitters? because the Dodgers made a very conscious choice when they decided to move off of Austin Barnes and when they decided to move off of Chris Taylor. That conscious choice was they wanted to have Ha-Seong Kim, they wanted to have Dalton Rushing at the major league level because they believed that those players are better players than Austin Barnes and Chris Taylor were respectively. As much as the organization appreciated and loved what Austin Barnes and Chris Taylor were able to do for the organization, Dalton Rushing and Ha-Seong Kim, in their eyes, they were better, talented players, and so they thought that they would keep them at the major league roster. So now that decision is made, there's no turning back. Chris Taylor is with the Los Angeles Angels. Wish him nothing but the best and desperately hope that he's able to reach his 10 years of service time and then some with them or for whatever organization he is a part of going forward. Wish him nothing but the best. He has done everything for this organization. I'm glad that he continues to remain within the Southern California area. They made a decision to move on and keep Ha-Seong Kim and Dalton Rushing at the big league level. So, if you're going to have these players at the big league level, you have to be able to develop them at the big league level to help their progression go along. With Ha-Seong Kim, with Dalton Rushing, they are not going to grow to become major league caliber players if they sit every single day on the bench. So it becomes incumbent on the Dodgers, which, yes, I know that they are in a competitive window, and yes, I know that they're still in a race for the division, and they need to do everything that they can to go out there and try to win this race. They still have to find different ways to be able to help develop the players that are younger at the big league level. And with Ha-Seong Kim, at least as of recent, and this could potentially be something that he's working on behind the scenes. It could be matchup-wise that they don't necessarily like some of the matchups that they're presenting with him. But if you want Ha-Seong Kim to go out there and develop into being a solid major league contributor, I don't think that's going to happen with 8 plate appearances a week. I just really don't think that's going to be the best use of his development. And this is not necessarily a call for Ha-Seong Kim to be starting every single day. I don't necessarily think that he is completely ready to be starting every single day. Perhaps you want to mix and match. Don't necessarily want to put him every single time against left-handed pitching. But you have to be able to find ways to be able to incorporate him a little bit more to make sure that you are investing in some of his plate appearances. This was something that I noticed when the Dodgers decided to bring up a player like a Michael Busch, who is performing well for Chicago. You look at his ex-WOBA is even better than what his WOBA is, so he might be even getting a little bit unlucky at times. They didn't really necessarily know how to incorporate him to the major league roster, and he struggled as a result of that. And I think not letting these guys be able to get adjusted to the big league level or getting consistent time at the big league level, I fear could hurt their development. And when they are going out there and playing on the field, might be pressing a little bit, which could be what you're seeing a little bit from Dalton Rushing at the plate, who is swinging and missing far beyond what his numbers showcased at the minor league level. It was not to this degree that he was swinging and missing as much, but it could be a little bit of a feeling, one, the necessity to go out there primarily and help out with the pitchers. That's the Dalton Rushing's first job, but also pressing a little bit because he's looking for as many opportunities as possible, and he's only got right now 2 starts a week, which, fair enough. Will Smith is your starting catcher and a very good starting catcher for the Los Angeles Dodgers. They still have to find a way to be able to effectively incorporate these guys. And what my fear for the Dodgers is they're going to keep these guys mostly on the bench and hope that they develop to be major league caliber players on the bench, which I don't believe is the best way to be able to develop major league hitters. I think they're going to need a little bit more consistent reps. I think they as an organization know that. I think one of the reasons why Andy Pages has become as good of a player as he has is because he got those consistent reps and has been able to consistently go out there, make adjustments. 5 pitchers made adjustments to him, so he made adjustments as well, which is leading to him being a more aggressive type of hitter instead of a much more patient, looking for the big home run or a walk as you saw earlier in the season. If you're only getting a couple at-bats a week, it's very difficult to be able to make those adjustments, or it takes a lot more longer to be able to do so. That's something that I'm noticing. That's something that's starting to become a little bit of a concerning trend with both of these guys, because what I don't want is for Ha-Seong Kim to be on the Major League roster, but to get Chris Taylor's role, which Chris Taylor's role was to sit on the bench and maybe once a week go out there and play. If that is what Ha-Seong Kim is designed to do or supposed to do now, you should have sent him down to Oklahoma City. You should have kept Chris Taylor around for a little bit longer to be able to fulfill that role. Just my opinion. We'll see where the organization takes this. I trust the organization. They've shown an ability to be able to develop hitters. I just praise the organization, especially as their ability to be able to go out there and help go through the process of developing players at the minor league level. And I believe in their ability to be able to develop Ha-Seong Kim and Dalton Rushing. It takes investment in those guys to make it happen. They're investing in Dalton Rushing at least once a series, which is a good thing. That is a start, and it'll be interesting to see how they incorporate him a little bit more, especially as he starts to find a little bit more of his footing at the plate at the big league level. Let's go ahead and get back into some of the comments, and then we'll look into perhaps some of the numbers of where things stand, in case you aren't necessarily all familiar with where the Dodgers players are at. And then we'll look at some tools and stuff to be able to look at as far as some things that the Dodgers might be looking at, particularly offensively with some of the hitters that they have. Let's go into some of the comments, though. Sam and Logic, love all the info, Austin. Eye-opening how good the single A to triple A is at player development. It is really awesome to be able to do so, and I think it's underappreciated, which is why I try to highlight it as much as it possibly can. BC, thank you very much for joining us. Chris Taylor, struggling a little bit to start his career in Los Angeles. I'm not going to degrade the guy who's over there, who's meant as much to the organization as possible, especially when the Dodgers aren't playing the Angels. I hope that he has a lot of success, and I hope he's able to stick around for quite a bit. He certainly has earned that with what he's done for this team. Don't necessarily know how to pronounce his name, but hard to believe the Angels were interested in Chris Taylor. He does have some versatility. He does have a little bit of track record of success with the Angels. If they have some sort of need, might go ahead and go out and give it a shot. Chuck Huddleston, if Conforto doesn't get hot soon, I'd like to see Ward get a shot in left field. It's an interesting proposition. Michael Conforto has been, and I think I looked at somebody posted the numbers over the past 2 weeks or so, and Max Muncy and Michael Conforto had been hitting a lot better over the course of the past 2 weeks. I still, and this opinion became a little bit shaken by the moves that they made with Austin Barnes and Chris Taylor. I still believe they're going to give Michael Conforto a lot of time and a lot of runway to be able to work things out. But if he's not able to figure things out, particularly over the course of the next month, which, yes, I still believe the organization is going to give him probably until towards the end of June to be able to figure things out. If that is the case, and it's still not working out, and it is very obvious that Michael Conforto is not going to be part of the picture, Ryan Ward's a really good option because of how good he has been down at the minor league level. Believes he's a 130-something WRC plus to this point this season at the AAA level. Plays corner outfield, mainly left field is where he would be positioned, so he would fit right into Michael Conforto's spot. And especially if you're not necessarily know what you're going to do from there forward, giving Ryan Ward maybe a couple of weeks before you potentially look somewhere for some type of trade, if that is the avenue that they decide to go down. Perhaps giving Ryan Ward a shot to be able to go and make an impression before they decide to do that might be the smart move. We'll have to wait and see. Michael Conforto still has the inside lane and still is his job to lose, although he has struggled quite a bit this season to be able to do that. Kim needs to play more. I agree. If for the sole reason of continuing his development, I don't think he's going to be the same level of hitter that he was when he started the season, meaning I don't think he's going to be necessarily the 130, 140 WRC plus guy immediately like he had been hitting well over 300. I just don't necessarily think that that's going to be the immediate impact of Hae-Sung Kim as you give it more time. As we saw with some of his numbers at AAA, it started to dip down a little bit as pitchers started to see him a little bit more. I still think that he's going to be and can be a really solid big league hitter if given the chance. And I think if given the chance is the very important aspect for the organization to take a look at and try to figure out a way to be able to incorporate him a little bit more. Chuck Huddleston will move Will to third base next offseason and spot start at catcher. We'll see what the organization does with Will Smith. As far as the organization has stated, Will Smith is going to remain a catcher, or at least play a big part within the catching rotation. I think he's got immense value at that. But as we've talked about before, finding ways to be able to incorporate Dalton Rushing on the playing field more, especially if you want to continue his development, having him only play 2 times a week, one of the ways you could potentially adapt for that is moving somebody to another position like Will Smith at third base, which has long been talked about. That's not going to happen during the season. That would be a potentially off-season type of thing that they potentially want to take a look to see where things are at with both Dalton Rushing and with the Will Smith, and then make an adjustment from there. Craig Osterberg, thank you very much for joining us. Dodgers need to stop dumpster diving before the trade deadline. It becomes a question of, do you want the Dodgers to go out and make the big impact trade right now? And do you want to give up some of your valuable pieces that perhaps you don't necessarily want to give up right now for a guy that might have some injury risk going forward? So I think this comes down to a conversation of relief arms. Dodgers need relief pitching right now because a lot of their relief pitchers are injured. You don't necessarily know if they're coming back or not. What you do know is that they are injured, they're rehabbing right now, and they potentially could be back. So then it comes down to a question of, what do you do in the interim? What the option that the Dodgers have decided to go down, which I think is in my opinion, Craig Osterberg obviously disagrees, in my opinion, is the correct decision because it allows for the organization to be able to stall a little bit to see what they actually need. They've gone out and got guys that are cheaper to get, got guys that might not necessarily be the long-term fixes, but can plug in holes right now. Now, because of the talent of the organization, they've still been able to win a lot of games. Not as many games as the Dodgers fans would like, but they are still winning a lot of games, still well in position to be in first place in the National League West, and still very competitive for first place overall to get home field advantage in the National League, which is something that's very important. The question becomes, when do you start using some of the assets that you have down potentially at the minor league level to go out and get trade targets, to go out there and try to acquire additional talent? Do you go ahead and pull the trigger at the end of May, early June to be able to do that? If that is the case, and especially if you're going to get pitching, you have to be, one, sure that there's going to be some type of role for them going forward, which I think there's a good argument based on the injuries that the Dodgers have. They always have injuries. You could always use pitchers. But then it becomes the question of, is the pitcher that you're going to be acquiring going to get hurt? Are they going to be dealing with some sort of injury? And the more time that you give them to be able to go out there and pitch, especially when it comes to innings that you actually need, the more of a risk that you're putting on yourself as an organization, and the higher the cost is going to be able to acquire them. So I think those combination of factors lead to not just the Dodgers, but most organizations when they are looking to acquire talent, especially when it comes to relief pitchers, wait a little bit to see who is actually available. What is the actual need? Is it going to be something where Michael Kopech's going to come back healthy? You're going to have Blake Trinan healthy. You're going to have Brusdar Graterol healthy, Edgardo Henriquez, all these guys, to where you might not actually need all these guys, in which case you have to option all the guys with minor league options, which right now, I don't want to option Ben Kasparius down to the minor leagues. As of yesterday, which I don't believe accounts for the games yesterday, so I haven't updated these numbers, Ben Kasparius has had the most Fangraphs WAR of any reliever in the game of baseball pitching as a reliever. I don't want to option that guy down to the minor league level. So if I don't necessarily have to, I won't want to if I don't necessarily have to. So when it comes down to the trade deadline, I agree with you in the sense of I don't necessarily want the Dodgers to go out and dumpster dive right at the trade deadline, meaning taking high risk guys during a season that is as valuable as this one. But I also understand an organization that wants to wait a little bit. And they've shown an ability to be patient. They've shown an ability to be able to acquire talent, and I trust the organization to be able to do so. That would be my response. Curious to hear what your thoughts, Craig, are. Totally respect your opinion as far as what you think and where you think the organization should go from there. Few more comments right now. Rojas's time is surely running out. We'll see what happens with Miguel Rojas. He is a little bit in a similar boat as Austin Barnes and Chris Taylor were, meaning guys that have been around the organization for quite a long time. He struggled a little bit. Actually, that's a pretty decent transition. Before we get back into some of the other comments, we'll go ahead and look at some of the numbers for the Dodgers position players on the year. This is, as I use with most of my statistics, found on Fangraphs. Go ahead and check them out and dive into some of the numbers yourselves. Miguel Rojas has struggled a little bit during his time this season. Down here, and you can see Miguel Rojas' numbers. Hitting 241, 268, 316 on the slugging. Just a 64 WRC plus, which is not very high. That's actually fairly close. Maybe his WRC plus is around 80 or so. Prior to last year, hasn't necessarily been a offensive force at the plate. But what's been more concerning is some of his defensive metrics down a little bit to start the season. Put a little bit of caution when you're looking at some of the defensive metrics. They can vary quite a bit. Actually, one of the most interesting defensive metric differences that I've seen out there has to do with a player like a Teoscar Hernandez. By outs above average, he's one of the worst outfielders in the game of baseball. Defensive run saves actually had him, at least as of a couple of days ago, as like a +3 in right field. Very vastly different evaluations of where players are at. But with Miguel Rojas, it is not to the level where it had been in the previously, and you can see in that reflective, his numbers are not quite as good as they had been in the past. Negative 0.1 WAR, which, if you're talking about finding ways to be able to get additional playing time for some of the other guys, this could be an area, especially for a Hae-Sung Kim, that you could potentially look at in getting additional playing time. But then you have to find a replacement for Miguel Rojas, and that's going to be the trick of who do they actually call up and replace a Miguel Rojas with. They don't have a Chris Taylor. They don't have an Austin Barnes. They stick around with that. We'll get into an option in just a minute. Looking at some of the other numbers offensively right now, Shohei Ohtani is still leading the club, 181 WRC plus. He has a 3 WAR. That's what he's leading the club in, because Freddie Freeman is a 186 WRC plus. Will Smith hitting really well. Andy Pages, 115 WRC plus right now, 1.7 WAR, doing well. Tommy Edman has really slowed down. You can see his WRC plus on the season down to 96. In fact, actually, this is really intriguing. And you can talk about what you think of WRC plus after this. Max Muncy has a higher WRC plus right now than Tommy Edman has on the season as a whole because of Tommy Edman's recent struggles and because Max Muncy has been hitting a little bit better at the plate. Fascinating little nuggets to be able to dive into right there. Kike is hitting pretty well. Teoscar's hitting well as well. Defensive metrics dragging down his WAR numbers, as you can see right there. But one of the things to take a look at, and this is something that I think is really important, particularly when looking at the Dodgers, is you also want to look at some of the platoon matchups, some of the platoon splits. How do these guys match up against lefties? How do these guys match up against righties? Because those are some of the matchups that you might be looking for as well. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to look at Fangraphs. We're going to look at splits because I want you guys to be utilizing this tool. And I want you to look to see how players are hitting versus left-handed pitching and then right-handed pitching to see if there's any sort of need for the Dodgers to go out there and potentially look to platoon guys as the season goes along. So what we have right now is we have Teoscar Hernandez, best hitter on the Dodgers against left-handed pitching. Same with Will Smith. Shohei Ohtani's pretty good. Kike Hernandez, and this is something that's really important because I want to point this out in comparison to another player so far this season. Kike Hernandez, 122 WRC plus against left-handed pitching. One of the things to keep an eye out for, and this is as the season progresses and as they formulate what they're going to do in the playoffs, Max Muncy versus left-handed pitching, WRC plus and 48 plate appearances, is a -10. Not too great for Max Muncy against left-handed pitching on the season. Kike Hernandez has performed pretty well. Perhaps you could see a little bit of that, and I think we're starting to see a little bit of that on the season of Max Muncy going out there and getting replaced at third base for when there is a left-handed starter out there, especially when there is a starter that they feel like Kike Hernandez is able to match up with really well. Couple of interesting notes with this. Michael Conforto, 111 WRC plus against left-handed pitching. He's actually been above average against left-handed pitching. Andy Pages, who is amazing against left-handed pitching, just around league average with a 93 right now. We'll wait to see if that continues to get better. Then Mookie Betts struggling a little bit against left-handed pitching. Versus right-handed pitching, we can look at some of the numbers. Freddie Freeman's doing well. Hae-Sung Kim, a 145 WRC plus against right-handed pitching thus far, which could be why they might want to utilize him against right-handed pitching quite a bit. Use that as much as you can to see what they're able to get out of him. Max Muncy, 130 WRC plus against right-handed pitching. So you're not going to completely eliminate Max Muncy. And perhaps this is something to keep in mind as a lot of Dodgers fans perhaps want to get rid of a guy like a Max Muncy going forward, or might not think he provides as much value to the organization. He still is able to put up some solid numbers, 130 WRC plus against right-handed pitching, and perhaps you might transition him into a little bit more of a platoon type of role in the future if he is forced upon doing so. You can see Kike's numbers are around league average against right-handed pitching, actually still pretty solid. Michael Conforto's are down a little bit against right-handed pitching. Miguel Rojas, 69 versus righties. Perhaps you could maybe if you're able to platoon a little bit, Hae-Sung Kim, Miguel Rojas, fit them in a little bit into maybe a little bit of Michael Conforto's playing time if he's not doing the level that if he's not hitting to the level of what he needs to be, or if Tommy Edman continues to struggle a little bit. So a little bit, and we'll go ahead and transition back to this screen back here. Some interesting nuggets for the Los Angeles Dodgers for their hitting where they are at. This is something that you should be looking at if you're looking to evaluate where the Dodgers at on the position player side offensively. How are they doing? But not just how are they doing overall, how have they been doing recently, and how have they been doing versus particular types of pitchers, because then you could be able to take advantage of those types of matchups in the future during a playoff type of setting. That is something that they could potentially take a look at. As CC Krub says, unfortunately, Kim would be playing more if he was right-handed against left-handed pitcher for somebody like Max Muncy. Potentially, although a lot of pitchers are right-handed pitchers, which that's the side of, if you were to have a strict platoon, that would be the side that you'd be looking for. Meaning if you're a part of a platoon situation, you want to be the left-handed hitter versus the right-handed hitter because there's more right-handed pitchers in the game of baseball. And I think that could potentially lead to a little bit more success. BC said Conforto has reverse splits, or at least to this point of the season. Yeah, and this is important when looking at these splits. Don't just make a conclusion based on what they've done this year. Also look in the past to see if this is a trend that they have had in the past as well, because that gives you more information going forward to see if they're going to continue to have some success going forward. Let's see. Craig Osberg says, yes, give up minor league players for established players. It depends who for who. And it's not just about giving up minor league players. It is minor league players are not just players in general that could potentially help your team. They are also value chips that you have. And is how can you maximize the value chips that are in your organization? When it comes to Kosway DePaula, when it comes to Zaire Hope, it's not just give them up for somebody. It is be able to help maximize what their abilities are and all the players within the organization. Be able to maximize all of the value that each one of these guys have. That's something important to keep in mind. So it's not just move all the minor league players for guys that can help with the big league club right now. Don't necessarily have enough room to be able to do that. It is a go out and be able to maximize the value that you have as an organization to make this team as best as possible, not just for this year, but for future years as well, because I think we often get caught up with solely focusing on the 2025 Dodgers, which certainly we should be focused on the 2025 Dodgers and making sure this team can and does win a World Series championship. But it's not just one World Series championship they want to win. They want to win for the next 10 years. How do you make that possible? If you trade all of your minor league assets right now for major league players, particularly major league players that might be free agents coming up, you're going to lose a lot of value as an organization, collective-wise, as far as the talent that you have, and it's going to really limit your ability to make moves going forward as a future. So yes, parades over prospects, but be smart about how you do it and understand that functioning as an organization, you can't always go out and do it by acquiring talent. Sometimes you have to develop talent. And I think one of the brightest developments within this organization is the continued development of a guy like an Andy Pages. In part is because the roster as a whole is very much on the older side. You need these younger guys to be able to help with the development process, and having Andy Pages be part of that, having Dalton Rushing, having Hae-Sung Kim be part of that is so necessary. Don't denigrate guys just because they haven't shown it necessarily yet, but do what you can to make this organization as talented as possible. That means be wise, be smart. Don't be afraid to go out there and make moves, but have rationale behind it and target the right moves and understand what it takes to have long, sustained success. That's what I want for the organization. I want this team to be in World Series for decades to come, not just in 2025. And that just becomes a lot of difficult conversations to be able to have. Let's continue on with the conversation. Showtime LA. Alex Freeland needs to replace Miguel Rojas. So that actually brings up an interesting conversation, and I have not pulled up any of his numbers yet. Let me go ahead and pull up some of his numbers right now, and we're going to look at a little bit of a section with Alex Freeland, something to keep an eye on for him. Actually, what I'm going to do first, and this is something that I didn't get a chance to tweet out yet, but he's actually had the past 2-ish weeks or so have been really solid for Alex Freeland. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up some of his numbers for the past 2 weeks since May 13th. Give me just a second to be able to pull up these numbers. This includes the past 2.5 series. He's had some really good numbers over the past 2.5 series. Alex Freeland, shortstop prospect, playing for Oklahoma City, the AAA affiliate of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Since May 13th, I should say, he's hitting .294, 400 on base percentage, 569 slugging percentage. That's 969 OPS, a 148 WRC plus. I believe has 3 home runs in that stretch, 5 doubles. Has a couple of stolen bases, 2 stolen bases during that time period. A couple of important numbers for Alex Freeland, and this is when Alex Freeland is at his best. He's, during this stretch, a 15% walk percentage and a 16.7 strikeout percentage, which Alex Freeland, if you looked at some of the overall numbers for him on the season, strikeouts have been a little bit up. They're at about 25.5%. Typically, those numbers go up as the season goes along. So that's really what you're looking for with Alex Freeland, is you're looking at the strikeout numbers. And in particular, and this is where we're going to dive into a little bit of additional metrics, a little bit of an informational heavy show on this show. But I think it's important to be able to talk a lot about this stuff, and it's fascinating for me. We're going to talk about a little bit of metrics and just some things to keep an eye out for if you're talking about players within the organization, because this is the thing that I'm watching the most as I'm watching the development with Alex Freeland, and perhaps the thing that I'm waiting for if I'm talking about Freed. All right, let's dive into a little bit of additional metrics. These, if you are unfamiliar, and it's not something that I've talked about nearly as much as I probably should have. We're going to dive into these metrics. This is actually from an article on Fangraphs talking about plate discipline metrics, and this goes a little bit more advanced than some of the metrics that we've talked about in the past. Typically, we talk about walk percentage and strikeout percentage, which is the outcome of what happens in the zone. This breaks it down a little bit more, and the reason why we don't talk about this stuff as much is because these numbers at the minor league level are only currently publicly available for AAA players, to the best of my knowledge, at least. One of the things you've heard me talk about quite a bit is a stat called swinging strike percentage. It's the number of swings and misses divided by the total pitches. But what I want to talk about in particular is 4 different metrics right now. We're going to look at O swing percentage, zone swing the out of zone swing percentage, the zone swing percentage, the out of zone contact percentage, and the zone contact percentage. And we're gonna make this a little bit of reference in Alex Freeland. Trust me, we'll get back to him in just a minute. The O swing percentage, if you see this, is the numbers of swings at pitches outside the zone divided by the number of pitches outside the zone. So if a pitcher throws a baseball and it's outside the zone, you as a hitter do not want to swing at that pitch because it's going to be a ball. And if it's going to be a ball, you don't want to swing at it because that's going to be a ball, and it's going to be something you don't really want to swing at. Also not going to be something that you're going to typically make good contact with. Z swing percentage is, instead of out of zone, Z for zone swing percentage is the swings at pitches in the zone divided by the total of pitches in the zone. So if you're going to swing at pitches, you want to be swinging at them in the zone. So this goes into that plate discipline metric. How well are you at going ahead and swinging at pitches and deciding which pitches are going to be the best to swing at? And then similarly, instead of swing percentage, the contact percentage. What is your contact percentage on pitches outside of the zone, and what is the contact percentage on pitches inside the zone? O for outside the zone, Z for inside the zone. And typically, and this goes down in a little bit, this is a little bit of a good reference. It's a little bit different, perhaps because we're dealing with minor league players, so some of these numbers might be inflated in certain aspects. Say, for example, the contact percentage might be down a little bit because they're still down at the minor league level, or perhaps might be up a little bit because they are at the minor league level, might not be facing as elite pitching. I actually haven't studied to see what exactly it is at the AAA level. But typically, the out-of-zone swing percentage, hitters typically swing about 30% of the time at pitches outside the zone, 65% in the zone. So the vast difference, as there should be. And then contact percentage outside the zone is about 66%. Zone percentage contact is about 87%. So, why do I bring that up? Is because I want to look a little bit at Alex Freeland, and we've had a chance to be able to not just look at his numbers this year, but look at his contact numbers throughout the course of his 2 seasons in Oklahoma City. Last year spent about a month and a half in Oklahoma City, spent about 2 months in Oklahoma City to this point. Another fascinating thing that we've seen with this is there is some StatCast data. You can see some of his hard contact with Alex Freeland is up. Max exit velo is increased from what it was last year in Oklahoma City. Higher hard hit percentage, which means he's making better contact. Very good thing for him. This is where it becomes a little bit of a concern, or something that I'm keeping an eye out for, is the out-of-zone swing percentage, the zone swing percentage, the out-of-zone contact percentage, and the zone contact percentage. One of the things to note about Alex Freeland is he actually does not swing quite a bit. Only about 40% of the pitches he actually swings at. League average is about 46%. He's one of the guys that does not swing that much. Very different from a guy like an Andy Pages right now, who's swinging at 53, 54% of the pitches that are thrown his way. Alex Freeland, not quite as much more disciplined at the plate. Some of the things to keep an eye out for him on the season, and that I have taken note of, is he's swinging a little bit more outside the zone and not making as much contact outside the zone, which is leading to a little bit of his elevated strikeout percentage. You can see this being at 22% compared to the 19% that it was before. The out-of-zone contact percentage has dipped a little bit. The in-zone contact percentage is a thing that I've noticed and actually has gotten quite a bit better over the past couple of weeks. So prior to this most recent stretch, and the reason why I preached caution when talking about Alex Freeland is the zone contact percentage before was sitting at about 79%. Which, if you remember back from this metric right here, the zone contact percentage typically is about 87%, which Alex Freeland, it was well below average. It's starting to get a lot better, and you're starting to see it trend very much in the right direction, starting to make a lot of more contact better, and especially if you compare that to the hard hit rate that he's able to have, he's starting to improve. But this is something to keep in mind when you're talking about Alex Freeland and going ahead and calling him up immediately. It is not just look at the WRC plus that a player has. It is not just look at how much he walks or how much he strikes out or how much power that he's hitting. Look at the entirety of the player and understand what the player actually is. With Alex Freeland, he's going to be decisive typically a lot of times on what he's going to swing at. And that's important because if there's going to be a little bit of swing and miss in his game, he's got to be able to be that decisive about it and not swing as much outside of the zone. And when it comes to inside the zone, he might have to make a little bit more contact until he's completely ready. This doesn't divide it into the most recent 2 weeks. I'd actually be very curious to see what his in-zone contact percentage is over the course of the next couple of weeks. But no, with Alex Freeland, that is actually trending up quite a bit, but still not necessarily to the degree of where it probably should be for him to be ready to make that necessary jump to the show. So with Alex Freeland, while it is, yes, I want him to replace a Miguel Rojas, in part because I root for a lot of the guys down at the minor league level. One, there has to be a role for Alex Freeland, and if they're already struggling with filling in a role for a Hae-Sung Kim, they're probably going to struggle to fill in a role with an Alex Freeland, and I don't want a large quantity of these guys just going out and sitting on the bench at the show and then ultimately not developing into the players that we know that they can and should be. And then this might be the final hurdle that Alex Freeland needs to do in order to make that jump in development to the big league level. It could be that he needs to jump this hurdle of making a little bit more in-zone contact, which, to his credit, starting to make a little bit more in-zone contact, very much a good thing. This is actually a metric. I'm sure Casey and I will talk about this a little bit more. Might dive into a little bit of some of the other players. It becomes a little bit tricky because this number is not available for the lower levels. I would love to have this number publicly available for example, for Great Lakes to look at it, for Josue De Paula or Zaire Hope to do further development of that. But because it's available for AAA players, we can do ahead a little bit of development. We can go ahead and look a little bit as far as those numbers for Alex Freeland. One of the big things to be able to keep an eye out for him, in zone contact, what is his ability to be able to do so? And it's not necessary that he has to reach the 87% mark. I believe Shohei Ohtani is closer to 80% like Alex Freeland is. The difference between Alex Freeland and Shohei Ohtani is Shohei Ohtani has unreal power that when he does make contact, it's not only going to be hit super hard, but it could very well go over the wall. Alex Freeland, while he does have quite a bit of power, not the same type of power that a Shohei Ohtani has, so you might want to see a little bit more contact for a Alex Freeland as things go forward. That's just something to keep an eye out for him and with players within the organization. Chuck Olson, Rojas hasn't looked great at defense as well. Yeah, that's something to keep in mind with Rojas. Talk about that a little bit. David Razor, Edman behind Muncy shows the selective nature of a lot of these advanced metrics. Take your pick of many, tells a different story. I think it's also, let's look at some of the basic metrics with a lot of this stuff, which, yes, I don't necessarily disagree with that, but also Tommy Edman hasn't necessarily been playing too particularly well as of late. It doesn't mean that Tommy Edman hasn't been a more valuable player than Max Muncy. Of course, Tommy Edman has been a more valuable player than Max Muncy this season because defensively is insanely better than what Max Muncy has. But Tommy Edman on the season is currently hitting 225, 271, and 444. 225 batting average on the season. Max Muncy is 211, but he has a 335 on base percentage, 343 slugging on the season. So, WRC Plus it takes into account a lot of these different metrics and puts value on things that are able to produce more runs. Things like home runs, things like hitting for power is going to be more valuable than providing singles. Although if you look just strictly at batting average, because of the recent struggle with Tommy Edman, 225 batting average, a large portion of Tommy Edman's early season success was his ability to hit for power, which if he's not providing that ability and he's only walking 4.5% of the time, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle offensively for him. It does not mean that I think that Tommy Edman is not a great player, nor do I think that Tommy Edman's going to be this level of player going forward. But I think you just have to keep all of these different metrics in mind when evaluating players, and don't put the blame completely on the metric itself without doing a complete evaluation of where things are at for each one of these guys. That's just would be my pushback a little bit. David Rizzer, Muncy puts up numbers when it doesn't matter mostly. Yeah, that would be interesting to look at some of those metrics, some of those numbers. Actually, you can look at some of those numbers. If you look at Fangraphs, you can look at low leverage, medium leverage, and high leverage situations. You look at WRC Plus during each one of those times. Max Muncy has a 105 WRC Plus in low leverage situations versus Tommy Edman's 87 WRC Plus during low leverage situations. Medium leverage situations, looking at these type of situations, Max Muncy again 105 WRC Plus and medium leverage, Tommy Edman 81. Where Tommy Edman has exceeded this year, and this is where your point absolutely is valid, WRC Plus during high leverage situations, which Tommy Edman only has 11 plate appearances, but he's hitting 444, 246 WRC Plus during those appearances. Max Muncy only has a in his 17 plate appearances and 9 WRC plus, just a 200 batting average with no real power right there. So I think it's totally fair to make a criticism. High leverage situations, Tommy Edman has succeeded overall throughout the course of the season. If you're talking just comparison WRC plus wise, using that as your sole metric, they've been roughly even as players as the whole of season is concerned. Craig Osterberg, Dodgers have too many older minor league players that they can use as trade chips. These players like Outman, Hunter Fiducia, aren't in the Dodgers plans. That is a different conversation, and I actually totally agree with you with that, especially with a player like James Outman, who very clearly, I think if you are the Dodgers organization, with him not going to be on the Major League club next year because he does not, and with him not having any minor league options, I think he's too good for AAA, but not good enough for the Dodgers Major League level based off of his track record, based off what he's been able to produce as of recent. And because that is the case, because he hasn't been able to produce, you got to look for some sort of potential way to be able to move to trade him. Unfortunately for the Dodgers, other organizations know he's going to be out of minor league options and know that he has struggled at the major league level. So he's not going to be the guy that's going to bring in a high value picks going forward or high value trade pieces. And so you have to be realistic about those choices. And if you want to be more upfront about making those types of trades, perhaps that's a different conversation that you have. Hunter Fiducia is interesting because you need to have depth at the catching position down at the minor league level. I think it's unfortunate that he is the guy that is considered depth at the minor league level, but you're going to have some sort of backup as an organization. And once the Dodgers decided to make the move for Dalton Rushing, they only have one backup guy right now that they would really trust at the major league level, and that is Hunter Fiducia. So I think throughout this season, he unfortunately is stuck with the organization unless they decide to go out and either sign or get some sort of backup catcher, or unless they trust Chris Oakey to be a backup caliber catcher in case Will Smith or Dalton Rushing gets hurt at some point through the season. Let's see, a couple more questions we'll go ahead and get into right now. I think I lost place with some of this right now. There's a comment by BC that I was going to get to. Just a second. BC, should we trade more prospects on a high instead of waiting for the stock to be as low as possible? It's got to be, you got to be opportunistic in how you do it, and it's got to be for the correct players. If you were going to trade some guys. So certainly have waited quite a bit for some of the guys, like if you're talking about James Outman, although in James Outman defense and in the Dodgers as an organization's defense, he was, during his time at the major league level in 2023, really, really good. And so they perhaps expected him to be part of the plans going forward as a center fielder. Just didn't happen to work out. They're going to have a lot of different guys that are part of the organization that are going to be filling in different roles. And you need to have guys that fill in certain roles at the big league level. It becomes which guys do you actually want to move off from, and which guys are other organizations perhaps valuing to a high degree. That is something that it has to be taken into account. Is they have to be, other organizations have to want these guys and want them to a high degree to be able to get them. It's not just trade the guys that you don't want or trade the older guys. It is look to find situations to where you can take a value from these guys and be able to put them in a best position to be able to succeed and get something back in return. And the Dodgers are limited in what they're able to get back at the major league level because of the number of players that they have. One of the areas that I think could enter into a little bit more conversation is looking at, okay, what do? We have a bunch of these older guys. We don't necessarily need them. What if we go ahead and trade maybe a couple of these guys potentially to another organization for guys that are a little bit younger prospects and be able to rejuvenate that cycle? I think that's a fascinating conversation that you potentially have that I think the Scott organization probably looks to have. I think those types of trades are a little bit more creative and a lot more difficult to be able to engage in and get done. but I think that's something that you can go ahead and take a look at and see. Try to make those types of moves, even for guys like potentially a Ryan Ward, or as was mentioned, a James Outman or a Cody Hosey, or guys that that are planning on being free agents at the end of the season. Maybe seeing if another organization wants to give them a chance at the big league level. That would be pretty awesome if they were able to give them another chance. Alex Renteria, we'll get to a couple more comments before we go ahead and get out of here. Alex Renteria, before the season started, the Dodgers had like 6 top-ranked prospects, excluding Rookie, but they've only brought up Dalton. How are the other prospects doing? We actually went into this a little bit earlier in the show. We talked about the Dodgers' ability to develop hitters. A lot of the guys that were mentioned towards the top of prospect rankings, which, as we here at Dodgers Daily, don't necessarily like using exclusively the prospect rankings. One, just because we want to give every single player in the organization a fair shot. Full disclosure, we interact with not just these guys, but these guys' families as well. So using and saying that this is the top guy in comparison to another guy in the organization who might actually even be playing better, I don't think is necessarily a fair evaluation. But a lot of the guys that are very highly ranked, like Josue DePaula, Zaire Hope, we already mentioned, doing incredibly well, 150, or around 150 WRC plus on the season, doing really well on the season, not taking into account today's numbers. Alex Freeland has been doing pretty well. Zaxton Ferris has been struggling a little bit, but if you look at his numbers in Great Lakes last year to this point in the season, they are right about in line to where he started last year before he started to turn things around. So I'm not really concerned with him quite yet. And Dalton Rushing was tearing it apart before he got called up. Those are typically some of the higher guys that people point to within this organization, although there's a lot of players to be excited about if you're a Los Angeles Dodger and you're looking at this organization to see how good it is. Elishiva Jones, Ryan Ward should be playing at the MLB level for some non-Dodgers team. I don't disagree with that in one shape, in any form. Ryan Ward is playing too good to be stuck down in Oklahoma City, which is leading to a lot of credence to a lot of you guys that are stating, go ahead and move off of a lot of these guys and try to find a place for them. Ryan Ward is currently 27, has yet to make his debut. Not really in fault of his own, but because of where he's at right now. Yeah, he's hitting 306 in Oklahoma City, 386 on base percentage, 518 slugging. Always has had that power, has 9 home runs and 220 plate appearances, 5 stolen bases, 133 WRC plus. Just incredible. He's not Taylor Ward's brother that I'm aware of. I don't believe he's Taylor Ward's brother. Ryan Ward is doing really remarkable stuff right now and deserves to be a guy that that gets some sort of chance at the big league level. So it's only a matter of time. We've seen, and this is a case, and I will talk about this at some point, a player that had been in this organization for quite a long time, Drew Avans, who meant a lot, particularly to Casey, because he got to see him in Oklahoma City year after year after year. Made his debut with the Athletics, got a base hit in his first major league plate appearances. I believe is in the starting lineup today. I don't know if that game actually already took place or not. Drew Avans made his big league debut, so I think with Ryan Ward, that is an inspiration of hope to continue to go out and continue to go and give everything you've got, because another organization is going to be calling his name and going to be giving him an opportunity at some point with the numbers that he's put up, and he's been able to hit just about every single place that he's gone. It's been great to be able to watch that. Tomatley, thank you very much for joining us. I know it's right at the end of the show. It's a fun show to be able to dive into, so I encourage you and everybody else who's just tuning in right now to go ahead and check this out again. I believe, if I have time, we might be doing another one of these live shows on Saturday. For those who are not at the beginning of the show, Casey is ill right now, is dealing with some sort of sickness. He should be back within a week or so, but I don't believe is going to be able to do many of the shows over the next couple of days. So I'll be stepping in and trying to fill in a lot of these shows. So we might be doing a Saturday late morning show. It might be the show that we had, 1988. Thank you very much for joining us. Matt Muncy and Conforto can hit over 20 home runs for the season. The Dodgers will win the division by 15. Each game might be 9-7 or 12-8, but we will win. Yeah, we'll see what happens. And Chris Navarro, thank you very much for joining us. I believe we should be doing, assuming nothing else pops up, a show on Saturday as well, talking a little bit about what has gone on during the first game of the Dodgers versus Yankees series. It's going to be a massive matchup between the two. Might dive into a little bit more of these numbers as well, although we've done a really good deep dive into a lot of this stuff. So we might be doing a little bit more of a Q&A type of format back and forth between each one of you, with you guys, and talking back and forth and making sure that we continue to keep Dodgers Daily going along live and well. I can't thank you guys enough for tuning in and supporting this channel, supporting us here, Dodgers Dawgs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. It really means a lot, not just to Casey, but also to me as well. Thoroughly enjoy doing this as much as I'm able to. Next week, I will be out quite a bit because next week the Loons will be in South Bend, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to be there Tuesday through Saturday, going to different games during the evening, which with working full-time 8 to 5 means that there's not a whole lot of time to be able to do these shows. So we'll do what we can the rest of the week. We'll do what we can to be able to provide you guys as much content as we can because it is a fun season. I know the last game was disappointing, but it is a fun season to be a fan of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Again, I want to thank you for tuning in here. Dodgers Dawgs is part of the Dodgers Daily Network. Be sure to check out the interviews that Casey did with some of the players in Oklahoma City. Was able to get to interact with some of the guys there. Just posted within the past couple of days. Those are the best stuff that we do here at Dodgers Dawgs, is the interaction that we get from the players. And I would much rather those players be elevated to a higher degree than any sort of notoriety that I'm able to get. That ultimately my job is to be able to help elevate those guys. So please go out and check out those interviews. We will be back coming up within the next couple of days. It's either going to be Saturday or Monday, whichever one I'm able to do. Or if Casey starts feeling better, I'm sure that, as you've seen in the past, he will jump on and start doing a lot of these shows as well, as he loves to do. You guys are awesome. You guys are the best. I thank you guys again for tuning in. And go Dodgers.